She raised her son to chase the sky, not knowing it would bring him face to the man who broke her. And when billionaire Alexander Cross stepped onto that plane, he didn't just see a pilot. He saw the family he paid the price to forget. Alexander Cross boarded his private jet after closing a billion-dollar deal. The world called him unstoppable, but inside he carried the quiet ache of something missing. As the jet began to roll, a young voice came through the intercom. "Good afternoon, Mr. Cross. This is your pilot, Jalen Pierce." The name hit like turbulence. Pierce. 15 years buried, and now it echoed back through the static. Alexander rose, pushing open the cockpit door. The pilot turned. Bright eyes, same jawline, same calm focus. It was like looking at a reflection trimmed in youth and innocence. For a moment, the powerful man could not speak. His breath caught somewhere between disbelief and recognition. Fate had finally cornered him at 30,000 feet. Sometimes, life circles back in ways money can't control. Stay with this story, because some meetings change everything. Alexander sank back into his seat, every heartbeat louder than the engine's hum. Pierce. The name echoed like a ghost through steel and air. He stared out the window, but the clouds blurred into nothing. Can fate really be this cruel? For 15 years, he had built walls of glass and money, skyscrapers of silence to keep memories buried. Yet, a single voice cracked them open. He tried to reason it away. Maybe just coincidence. Maybe the world was smaller than it seemed. But that voice, the calm confidence, it carried the rhythm of someone he once knew. Someone he'd left behind for a deal, a future, a throne built on regret. He pressed his palms together, breathing slow. The old ache returned, the one success never silenced. Don't go back there, he warned himself. Not now. Not at 30,000 feet. The seatbelt light blinked off. Alexander stood again, drawn forward by something he didn't understand. The past was waiting behind that cockpit door. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside, panels glowed blue and green, casting light across the young pilot's focused face. "Smooth flight," Alexander said, steadying his voice. "How long have you been flying?" "Officially, since I was 17, Jalen replied, smiling. "But my mom started teaching me years earlier." Alexander's throat tightened. "Your mom?" "Naomi Pierce," Jalen said easily. "She runs Blue Horizon Flight Academy out of Savannah." Alexander froze. The name hit harder than the turbulence outside. Naomi. Her laugh, her voice, her tears the day he left, all came rushing back. "She must be proud," Alexander managed, each word heavier than the last. "She is," Jalen said, eyes bright. "She taught me everything I know. Said the sky doesn't forgive arrogance. I guess that stuck." Alexander forced a smile. "Wise woman." "Yeah," Jalen nodded. "She's the best." The echo of those words tore through Alexander's chest. The best, and he had walked away from her. Jalen glanced back to adjust a control. For a fleeting second, their eyes met in the reflection of the windshield. Alexander saw his own face, only younger, unbroken, untouched by regret. The resemblance was undeniable. The same jaw, the same stubborn curve of the lips. His pulse stumbled. 15 years ago, he had chosen ambition over love, stocks over sunsets, legacy over laughter. Naomi's tears had followed him to every boardroom, hidden behind every glass of scotch. He looked away, afraid the boy might see too much in his silence. "Everything okay, sir?" Jalen asked. "Fine," Alexander lied, voice tight. "You just remind me of someone I used to know." Jalen smiled. "Hope that's a good thing." Alexander didn't answer. He was staring at this reflection again, realizing that the man he used to be was sitting right there, behind the controls, wearing a younger face, still believing the sky could fix everything. And, for the first time, Alexander wished it could. The plane descended through soft clouds, landing smooth as silk. Alexander stayed seated, pulse still unsteady. The cabin door opened. A woman stepped through, tall, poised, her navy uniform pressed crisp against sun-browned skin, her hair pulled back, though a single curl had escaped. Naomi Pierce. She scanned the cabin, clipboard in hand. When her gaze reached him, she froze. The clipboard slipped, hitting the floor. Naomi. His voice cracked around her name. Her expression hardened. Please fasten your seatbelt, Mr. Cross. We're still under final checks. The tone was professional, distant, but her eyes betrayed a storm. He swallowed hard. You look— Don't, she cut in. Whatever you're about to say, don't. Then she turned, walking back toward the cockpit. Alexander sat in silence, breath shallow. 15 years of distance collapsed into one impossible moment. The woman he'd loved, the son he never knew, and the sky that had finally brought them all together. Naomi strode across the tarmac, her steps sharp against the fading roar of engines. Alexander followed, rain misting the air, his words chasing after her. Naomi, please. She spun around, eyes flashing. Don't touch me, Alex. The name hit like a slap. No one had called him that in years. He stopped, breath uneven. I didn't know you were here. I didn't know about him. Her laugh was short, bitter. You never asked. You were too busy buying the world. You thought money could erase guilt? She snapped. He's a good boy. You stay away from him. Her words left a hollow in the air. He wanted to say something, anything, but everything sounded wrong. Naomi turned, her shoulders tight, walking away under the low savannah sky. Alexander stood rooted in silence, the scent of jet fuel and memory heavy around him. For years, he'd mastered control. Deals, numbers, power, everything had a rule. But love never did. He caught up to her near the hangar. The wind carried salt from the coast, the storm rising again. Naomi, he said, softer this time. Tell me the truth. Is he— Her eyes met his, steady and cold. He's your son. The words landed like impact. Alexander's chest tightened. My son? Yes, she said. You chose your empire over us. I told him his father was dead. It was easier than telling him who you really were. He staggered back, speechless. I didn't know, Naomi. You should have told me. And what would you have done? She demanded. Send checks? Visit for holidays? Or take him away so he'd fit your image? That's not fair. It's the truth, she said, voice trembling. You made your choice 15 years ago. Don't rewrite it now. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. He let it hit his face, because for the first time he knew what regret really felt like. The beach was quiet except for the steady rhythm of the tide. Alexander sat on the damp sand, shoes off, suit jacket folded beside him. The moonlight turned the water silver, endless, indifferent. He'd built an empire from nothing. People called him relentless, brilliant, untouchable. But sitting there, all he could think was how empty the view looked when no one shared it. Naomi's words repeated in his head. You chose your empire over us. He picked up a handful of sand and let it slip through his fingers. That's what time had done, taken everything he didn't hold on to. I built everything, he murmured, voice raw, except a life. A wave rolled over his feet, cold and grounding. Somewhere above, a plane crossed the night sky, a soft hum fading into distance. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he prayed. Not for success, but for a chance to begin again. He stayed there long after the tide retreated, watching the stars blur into morning light. Somewhere between night and dawn, he made a decision. Morning light cut through the fog, brushing over the glass of Alexander's villa. His phone buzzed. Harris, his assistant, waiting on instructions. Sir, should I arrange your return flight to New York? Alexander stared out toward the coastline. Naomi's flight school was just miles away. He could almost hear the faint echo of engines from the runway. No, he said finally. Find me a place near Blue Horizon Flight Academy. There was a pause on the other end. How long will you be staying? Indefinitely. Harris hesitated. Is this about them? Alexander's voice softened. It's about doing something right for once. He hung up, exhaling slowly. Outside, the gulls cried above the surf, circling the airfield in the distance. For 15 years, he had run from the past. Now, he was staying, to face it. The small rental house smelled faintly of salt and old wood. On the table lay a stack of aviation magazines. One caught his eye, Naomi Pierce, Instructor of the Year. Her smile in print was confident, radiant, everything he remembered and more. Next to it, another clipping. Jalen Pierce, youngest pilot to win the Coastal Cup. Alexander traced the edge of the photograph with his finger. Pride and pain tangled inside him. He could see himself in that smile, in the determined look in the boy's eyes. He had watched companies rise and crumble, fortunes shift overnight, but nothing compared to what he had lost through silence. A drop of water fell onto the page. It wasn't from the sea breeze. He blinked, wiping it away. For years, he'd measured life in profit and power, but now, holding their faces between his hands, he understood something simple. Love was the only legacy that mattered, and this time he wasn't going to lose it. The morning sun cast long shadows across Blue Horizon Flight Academy. Alexander parked at the edge of the field, far enough not to be seen. The hum of propellers drifted through the open window of his car. On the runway, Jalen was laughing as he practiced takeoffs with another student. That sound, bright, effortless, hit Alexander harder than any deal he'd ever closed. He watched the boy lift the small plane off the ground, steady and sure. Naomi's voice echoed faintly in his memory. The sky doesn't forgive arrogance. Now her son was proving it true, confident, focused, unshaken by the wind. Alexander smiled, the kind of smile that carried both pride and grief. He wanted to step out, to tell the truth. But his hands stayed still on the steering wheel. For now, watching was enough. To see him alive, happy, whole. The son he never knew he had, and yet had always dreamed of. A few days later, fate crossed their paths again. Not on the runway this time, but inside a small cafe near the airfield. A few days later, Alexander walked into a small cafe near the airfield. He ordered black coffee, no sugar, and took a seat by the window. Moments later, Jalen entered, still in uniform, looking for a free table. Their eyes met. "Hey, Mr. Cross, right?" Jalen said, surprised but cheerful. "From the flight?" Alexander nodded. "Yes. Please, join me." Jalen sat down, grinning. "You're local?" "For a while," Alexander replied. "Needed some quiet." They talked about planes, the weather, the thrill of flying. "Mom says hard work beats luck," Jalen said, stirring his drink. Alexander smiled softly. "She's right." "Yeah," Jalen chuckled. "She usually is." For the first time in years, Alexander laughed. Really laughed. It was easy with this boy. Too easy. He could feel the truth pressing behind every word, but he swallowed it down. For now, it was enough just to listen. The bell above the cafe door jingled. Naomi stepped in, scanning the room. Her gaze froze the moment she saw them. Jalen leaned forward, mid-laugh, while Alexander listened, eyes full of quiet admiration. Naomi's breath hitched. Anger rose fast, sharp and familiar. She crossed the room before Jalen could notice. "Outside," she said tightly. Alexander stood, knowing better than to argue. Jalen looked up, puzzled. "Everything okay, Mom?" "Just fine," she said, forcing a smile. "Finish your drink. I'll be right back." Outside, the air was thick with heat and tension. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "Following him?" "No," Alexander said. "It just happened." "Nothing just happens with you," she snapped. He met her glare. "You can't keep him from me forever." Naomi's jaw tightened. "Watch me." They stood in the parking lot, words sharp as glass between them. Naomi's voice shook, not from fear, but fury. "Stay away from him, Alexander. He doesn't need you. He's had a good life." "He deserves the truth," Alexander said. "He deserves to know who he is." She stepped closer, eyes burning. "He deserves peace, the kind of peace you destroyed." Her words landed deep. Alexander lowered his gaze, struggling for breath. "You think I wanted this?" he said quietly. I thought walking away would protect you." "From what?" she asked. "Love? Responsibility?" Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they'd never said. Naomi turned away first. "Don't make me regret letting you live this long in his world. Stay out of it." He watched her walk off, the sound of her footsteps fading like rain on concrete. For once, Alexander didn't chase her, but he wasn't ready to disappear either. Days passed. Alexander returned to the hangar, staying in the background. When Jalen's plane sputtered during maintenance, he stepped in. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked casually. "Sure," Jalen said, wiping his hands. "You know mechanics?" "A little," Alexander replied, crouching beside him. Together they worked in comfortable silence, the smell of oil and metal filling the air. Jalen laughed when Alexander dropped a wrench. "You're not bad for a city guy." "Thanks," Alexander smiled. "I learned fast." From a distance, Naomi watched through the window of the office. Her arms were crossed, but her eyes softened. For the first time, she didn't step in to stop them. She just stood there, listening to their laughter mix with the hum of engines. Alexander looked up once, catching her gaze through the glass. She didn't move. Neither did he. Maybe, for the first time, that was enough. The next morning, Naomi stood beside the hangar door, arms crossed, watching Alexander hand Jalen a wrench. There was laughter again, light and unguarded. She sighed, the sound caught somewhere between surrender and exhaustion. When Jalen left to refuel, she approached. "You can help," she said quietly. Alexander turned, uncertain. "But my rules. He can't know yet." He nodded, grateful even for the smallest opening. "I understand." "This isn't forgiveness," she warned. "I know. It's a start," he said. Her eyes flickered with something softer, then vanished. "Stay in the shadows. Let him believe this is just mentorship." "I can do that," he promised. Naomi looked toward the runway. Jalen was waving from a distance, bright against the morning light. She exhaled slowly. "Don't break him, Alex. He's everything I ever did right." "I wouldn't dare," Alexander replied. She turned away, but for the first time she didn't feel the need to run. Later that night, Alexander sat alone in his small rented house. The table was covered with photographs. Naomi holding a newborn, Jalen as a boy, the two of them smiling beside old planes. He traced each image with trembling fingers. The years he had missed unfolded like a silent movie. Birthdays, laughter, scraped knees, victories. He hadn't been there for any of it. A picture of Naomi teaching Jalen to fly caught his eye. Her hand rested lightly on the boy's shoulder, her expression proud, patient, alive. "I missed everything that mattered," he whispered. Outside, the night was heavy with the sound of crickets and distant thunder. He leaned back, eyes closing. The rhythm of the storm matched the ache in his chest. For once, the man who built empires wanted nothing more than time. Time to be a father, even if only from the edges. Jalen invited Alexander to dinner at their small home near the airfield. Naomi hesitated, but said nothing. The meal began awkwardly. Forks scraped plates, conversation drifted in and out. Then Jalen cracked a joke about Naomi's cooking, and Alexander laughed before he could stop himself. Naomi shot him a look, half stern, half amused. Jalen laughed louder, proud of himself. "Guess I'm not the only one brave enough to say it," Alexander teased. For a heartbeat, the room warmed. The air filled with something unfamiliar. Ease. Naomi poured coffee and sat down. "It's been a while since someone laughed in this house," she said quietly. Alexander looked up. "Then let's fix that." For the first time in years, they shared a table not as ghosts of the past, but as fragments of a family rediscovering its shape. Outside, wind brushed the trees. Inside, laughter lingered a moment longer than silence. After dinner, Alexander helped clear the dishes while Jalen played guitar softly in the living room. The melody was simple, but full of heart. At the sink, Naomi handed him a towel. Their fingers brushed, both pausing in the quiet. "I wish I'd been there," Alexander said. His voice trembled, almost lost beneath the sound of strings. Naomi didn't look up. "So do I." For a moment, neither spoke. The kitchen smelled of soap and cinnamon, the kind of ordinary peace they'd both forgotten existed. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "Just the chance to do better now." Naomi finally met his eyes. "We'll see if time agrees." He smiled faintly, grateful for even that. In the next room, Jalen's song carried a line about skies and second chances. Alexander closed his eyes, letting the words sink deep. Maybe this was what redemption sounded like. Soft, uncertain, but real. Days later, the weather turned restless. Dark clouds gathered above Savannah, winds whispering promises of rain. Naomi stood by the hangar office, scanning a manifest. "There's a medical supply flight headed to St. Simon's," she told Jalen. "Short hop, but urgent. I'll take it." Alexander, nearby, frowned. "You shouldn't fly in this weather." She smiled thinly. "I've flown through worse." "Let someone else go," he said. "It's not worth the risk." Naomi met his gaze, steady and calm. "It's medicine for children. It's always worth the risk." Jalen stepped closer. "I'll go with you." "No," Naomi said firmly. "Stay grounded till I'm back." The first drops of rain hit the tarmac. Alexander felt the unease rising, a knot forming in his chest. He watched her walk toward the small plane, hair whipped by the wind. Something inside him whispered that this storm would change everything. The sky had turned the color of steel. Naomi gripped the controls, rain hammering against the windshield. The radio crackled with static. "Blue Horizon 19er, do you copy?" A voice called through the storm. "Copy," she replied, steady but strained. "Engine failure, altitude dropping, requesting emergency clearance." Lightning flashed. The plane shuddered violently. Instruments blinked red. Her heart raced, but her hands stayed firm. For years, she had taught others how to stay calm in chaos. Now, it was her test. The storm roared louder, echoing everything she'd buried. Fear, regret, the ghost of a man she once loved. "I'm not going down," she whispered, jaw tight. "Not like this." The plane dipped again, alarms blaring. Naomi fought the yoke, searching for any pocket of calm air. Outside, the horizon disappeared completely. Only wind, rain, and the sound of her own heartbeat remained. Then came silence. The engine died. She took one last breath and whispered, "Please, just let me see them again." Minutes later, the control tower lost her signal. The room filled with static and panic. One moment she was there, and then she was gone. At the hangar, Alexander watched the radar flicker in and out. The storm swallowed Naomi's signal. "She's gone off course," the dispatcher said. "No," Alexander muttered. "She's still out there." Jalen burst through the door, soaked from the rain. "Mom's not answering." Alexander's eyes locked on his. "Get to the helipad. We're going." "What? It's suicide." "I've flown through worse," Alexander lied, already moving. Within minutes, they were in the air, the helicopter bucking under the storm's fury. Lightning flashed like broken glass across the sky. Jalen's hands shook on the controls. "We'll never see her through this." Alexander grabbed the radio. "Naomi, it's Alex. Hold on. We're coming." Static. Then a faint voice. Broken. Fading. "Cross. Engine down. I can't." "Hang on," he shouted. "Just hang on." The storm raged, but neither turned back. Redemption doesn't wait for calm skies. Through sheets of rain, a flash of metal appeared below, a plane half buried in the marsh. "There!" Jalen pointed, heart pounding. They hovered low, wind tearing at the blades. Alexander leapt out first, wading through knee-deep water. The wreckage hissed and smoked, rain turning steam into ghosts. "Naomi!" he shouted. A faint cough answered. She was pinned inside, soaked, blood at her temple, but alive. "You came?" she whispered. "Always," he said, voice breaking. With Jalen's help, they pulled her free. The three of them collapsed together in the mud, the storm still howling above. For a long moment, they just breathed. Naomi's hand found his. Alexander looked at her, rain mixing with tears. "I thought I lost you again." "You didn't," she murmured, before fainting into his arms. The storm began to fade, as if mercy itself had run out of thunder. Beeping monitors replaced the roar of wind. Naomi lay still under soft hospital lights, her skin pale but warm. Alexander sat beside her, fingers tracing the edge of her blanket. Jalen stood by the door, watching silently. "She's stable," the nurse said. "Just rest now." When they left, the room fell quiet. Alexander leaned closer, voice low. "I never stopped loving you, Naomi. I just forgot how to say it." Jalen froze in the doorway, the words sinking in. He turned away before his father could see the confusion in his face. Naomi stirred, whispering something too faint to catch. Alexander brushed a tear from her cheek. "You're safe now," he said softly. Outside, dawn spread gold across the horizon, the first clear morning after the storm. But inside, something else was beginning to break open. Later that day, Jalen wandered into the quiet of his mother's office to fetch her jacket. The raincoat hung on the back of a chair, still damp. On the desk sat an old folder, edges worn with time. He reached for it absent-mindedly, and paused. A birth certificate lay half-hidden inside. His name, his date of birth, and, under father, 2 words that changed everything. Alexander Cross. The air left his lungs. He stared at the page until the letters blurred. In an instant, every look, every strange silence, every half-finished sentence made sense. He gripped the desk, heart hammering. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." Outside, the sky cleared, the world calm again. But inside, a new storm was rising, one built from betrayal, truth, and the ache of everything unspoken. Rain hammered against the windows of Alexander's house as the door burst open. Jalen stood there, soaked and shaking, the paper clutched tight in his hand. Alexander rose from the chair, startled. "Jalen, were you ever going to tell me?" The words cut through the air like lightning. Alexander froze. His eyes fell on the paper in Jalen's grip. He didn't need to read it. He already knew. "I wanted to," Alexander said quietly. "I just didn't know how." "You had 19 years, Jalen snapped. 19 years to find a way. Your mother thought—" "Don't blame her," Jalen shouted. "You had choices. Both of you did." Alexander's shoulders sagged. "You're right." The storm outside rattled the glass, thunder rolling through the silence. Jalen turned toward the door, voice low. "You don't get to walk in and call yourself a father." Alexander didn't follow. He only whispered, "I was never trying to. I was just trying to be there." But the door slammed shut before he could finish. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving gray light over Savannah. Naomi sat in the hospital lounge, pale but awake. Jalen stood near the window, arms crossed. Alexander entered quietly, hat in hand. No one spoke at first. Then Jalen turned. "You both knew." Naomi's voice broke. "I lied to protect you." Alexander met his son's eyes. "And I left because I was blind." Jalen's fists tightened. "You both stole 19 years from me." Naomi's tears came fast. "You think I didn't pay for it every day? I watched you grow without the man I hated and loved at the same time." Alexander's voice trembled. "I thought leaving meant saving you both from my mistakes." Jalen looked between them, anger giving way to exhaustion. "All this time I thought I was missing something. Turns out it was both of you." The three stood there, bound by silence thicker than apology. Somewhere outside, a plane took off, its engine a reminder that some journeys start only after the crash. That night, the house was still. Jalen sat alone on the porch, watching the fading streaks of sunset melt into the horizon. The storm had rinsed the air clean, but his heart still felt heavy. He thought of his mother, her strength, her silence. He thought of Alexander, the regret behind every word. Both had carried their wounds in different ways. He realized they weren't villains, just human. Proud, scared, and broken in the same places. The anger softened, replaced by something quieter. Inside, he heard footsteps. Alexander stepped out, pausing by the doorway. "I'll leave tomorrow." he said softly. Jalen didn't turn. You don't have to. Alexander blinked. You sure? I'm not saying it's fixed, Jalen said. I'm saying maybe it can be. For the first time, Alexander didn't speak. He just sat beside his son, the two of them watching the last light disappear behind the trees. A week later, the sky over Savannah burned pink and gold. Naomi stood by the small Cessna, arms folded, as Jalen and Alexander performed the pre-flight checks together. You sure about this? Naomi asked. Positive, Jalen said with a grin. We've got perfect weather. Alexander climbed into the passenger seat. I'll try not to talk too much. Good plan, Jalen teased. Naomi smiled faintly and joined them in the back. The engine roared to life, wind sweeping across the field. As they rose above the coastline, the horizon opened wide, endless and forgiving. Red sky at night, Jalen said, eyes on the clouds. Alexander looked at him. Sailor's delight. Naomi laughed softly. Maybe this time we all fly together. For a moment, there was nothing but sunlight, laughter, and sky. And for the first time it didn't feel borrowed. It felt like home. They learned that money can't buy time, but love can heal what pride once destroyed. Some storms break us. Others teach us how to fly again. On the horizon, the small plane glided steady and sure, three souls finding balance in the same sky that once tore them apart. Below, the ocean shimmered like glass, reflecting light and forgiveness. Alexander's hand rested quietly on Naomi's. Jalen's voice filled the radio with laughter. There were no more secrets, no more running, just a family learning to move forward, 1 mile at a time. If you believe some mistakes deserve a second chance, share this story, because sometimes redemption doesn't come from falling. It comes from learning how to fly again.